Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Unfudge Your Marketing. This is a show where I chat with business owners about marketing missteps, mishaps, and things that didn't quite go as planned. But most importantly, share the lessons learned with all of you, our listeners. I am your host. I'm Christy Mitchell. I am a marketing strategist and consultant, and I work with service based business owners who have relied on referrals of word of mouth to build their business. And they know in order to take things to the next level, they need to finally think more strategically about a marketing plan. Today, I am so excited to welcome Bob Woods onto the show. Bob was the 74,899th person to join the LinkedIn platform, which now boasts over 1 billion users worldwide, solidifying his presence since its inception. In 2003, having recently transitioned from journalism to business, Bob joined LinkedIn with curiosity, coming from a background covering companies like AOL, CompuServe, Prodigy, and other social platforms. Back then, LinkedIn was relatively basic, a baseball card collecting experience where people connected whether they knew each other or not. Still, it served as a way for him to keep up with business contacts. By 2007, while working at a tech startup focused on developing a social and work platform for the commercial real estate industry, Bob began teaching CRE professionals to use platforms like LinkedIn to network and start business conversations, a practice that would come to define his career. In a co authored book on LinkedIn and social selling, Bob predicted that LinkedIn would become a vital tool for salespeople, a forecast that has since proven accurate. With tools like Sales Navigator and AI now in play, he views LinkedIn as an unmatched asset for today's sales efforts, especially in remote working environments. Bob is enthusiastic about the new era of sales, helping others master LinkedIn, Sales Navigator, and AI to drive growth through impactful social selling and creating sales conversations that close more business. With that, welcome to the show, Bob.
Christy, it's very, very nice to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. I am excited. I had the opportunity to be on your podcast, and now you're coming on my show. And I'm really excited for this conversation. I like to give our listeners just a little background on how we know each other. So, we were actually recently introduced through a mutual connection, and we had a call, hit it off, decided we needed to interview each other on each other's shows, and here we are.
Yep, short, sweet, and very accurate. Yeah, no, this is great how this type of thing works out. I'm not sure when your episode is going to be on our podcast, but if you want to catch it, the podcast is called Making Sales Social. So
Yes.
keep an eye out for that because we
Awesome.
had a terrific conversation. It was absolutely great.
Yes, and I think that we share a lot of similar beliefs related to relationship building and authenticity and all of those things core to both marketing and sales.
Yep.
And so I'm excited for this chat today because you wanted to actually talk about one of your clients, which I thought would be an interesting thing to do on the show. So you
Yeah.
had a client that you mentioned who was a financial services rep, and they were sharing content on LinkedIn, but the only engagement they were really getting was from other people in the same space as they are. And I'm excited to chat about this because I have heard from other people, not in the finance space, but others, that
Yeah.
they've built an audience on LinkedIn, but it wasn't the right audience. And so I'm really excited for this conversation. Where would you like to kick it off?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's all about your audience and me coming as you coming from as you mentioned at the top journalism and actually my specific space with broadcast journalism. One thing that I get is audiences, and so I've kind of in my own personal mindset. I've kind of transferred from, a general audience, although we had certain demographics that even we were looking to hit, even in newscasts, believe it or not, there are demographics that are more desirable than others. It's the same type of thing, but only with prospects instead. So I call them, your audience of prospects.
Mm,
So I do
I
think
like that
a
qualifier.
little bit of a mindset shift. So you have to determine who your audience of prospects is. and that's your, it's basically your ICP, your ideal client profile, or whatever industry term or jargon you want to hang on that. But essentially, the same people who you're trying to sell to are your audience of prospects on LinkedIn, and you can apply that to other socials as well, obviously. But since I deal mainly with LinkedIn, and because LinkedIn is set up how it is with the mindset, or at least our mindset, and I know that I include you in this as well, of 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 building value in whatever it is you do, because you don't want to be talking about products all the time and things like that.
Yes.
So you want to build value. So you ideally want to build value with your audience of prospects. Now you can do that with like networking partners and things like that too. And there are ways to do that. And you should be thinking about doing that as well. But ideally, we got to make money. So we got to be talking to our audience of prospects. And we certainly don't want to be attracting people in the same industry who are competitors to ours. That would to what we're doing. Adjacent is okay because that gets more into networking partners, but the direct competition, nah, you don't want that at all.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to just hone in on a point here because I always try and be mindful of the variety of listeners that we have. And
Mhm.
so if someone is like ICP, ideal client profile, what is that? I just want to clarify there's other terms, as Bob kind of alluded to. So when I do this exercise with my clients, we call it the buyer persona process.
Mhm.
Client avatars is another common term. So any of those phrases or terms that you're hearing are interchangeable, they mean the same thing. There's different ways that you might go about identifying those and processes you could take yourself through. If you just do a quick online search, you can find some guides and tutorials, or you can work with someone who's a marketing expert who can help you really hone in on those details of who that ideal client is that you're trying to target. And I love your point, Bob, that an audience is an audience, but a prospect audience is those people who you would want to work with, right? Who are interested in what it is that you have to offer. So I really like that clarifying statement that it's not just, yeah, you can build an audience, but to this example you want to share with us, right? It's your audience isn't super valuable to you if they're people doing exactly what you do.
Yeah, you have to influence that audience. We call it, and this is a new term that we came up with. It's all about micro influencing, essentially.
Mm,
So you're not a Kardashian. You don't want to go out there and attract anyone and everyone like they do, but they want to do that, and you don't want to.
yes, I like that micro influencing. So getting super clear on who that ideal audience is. And then where do you go from there once you have that clarity? How
Yes.
does that help inform your efforts?
Yeah. So I think probably a good place to start would be to talk about that financial services client. So that we had. So this particular person was sharing content. Good for this person. A lot of people don't even do that. So most people still don't even do that. And why aren't you doing that? But anyhow, it's another story. Uh, anyhow, this person was sharing content, but as we said before, it's the type of content that only attracted his competition, other financial services advisors. So it's like, why is that? Why was that content only attracting other financial services advisors? So what it came down to is that person was sharing content that only attracted other financial service advisors because it's the content that this person wanted to talk about. And that is the key here, because we think that the stuff that we want to talk about is the stuff that everyone out there is going to want to talk about. Guess what? That is very often not the case. You really need to determine what your audience of prospects, your ICP, your client avatar, whatever, what they want to hear. And almost guarantee you they ain't the same.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to talk about this because we touched on it a little bit in our prior conversation. There's this tendency, I think, for most content creators to, because they're so good at what they do. They understand their ideal client. They understand their industry. And they're like, I want my ideal client to know this thing, this
Mhm.
fact, this nuance, this process, this thing that I know is important for them. But the problem is, and I think we'll agree on this, is that if you're not packaging that message in a way that really speaks to what pain point your ideal client is going through, you end up with this disconnect between the message you want to deliver and what that ideal client is open to hearing and thinking is relevant to them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about framing. I mean, some of the stuff that you want to talk about probably is important, but you're not presenting it in a way that your audience can, potentially get takeaways from it. That's probably one of the easiest ways to kind of hang your hat on a hook with this one. So, if you're talking about how a widget does X, Y, and Z, it's like, okay, fine, this widget does X, Y, and Z. How does that benefit the people who you are trying to communicate with? And we're all about starting sales conversations. And so, all of the content that you're trying to create is for one thing and one thing only, to actually get relationships going. Well, two things: to get relationships going, obviously, and number two, to get that offline conversation started. So y'all are probably thinking at this point, this guy does LinkedIn. Why is he talking about offline? It's because you don't make sales on LinkedIn. I mean, it's that simple. You have to talk to people. And sometimes people just forget that. They get into that influencer mentality, and they start looking for views and video views and stuff like that, and they start valuing those metrics more. And it's like, I can get 1,000 views of a video, but if it doesn't create any sales conversations, in my mind, it failed. If I get 20 views of a video and it gets me 3 sales conversations, that's a success. That is what you're looking for. So that's why you have to package your content, and you have to put a frame around your content that your audience has to find it valuable. They have to have some takeaways. They have to have some kind of insight from your content. It's not just about going out there and just spewing stuff and seeing what sticks. Not at all. I mean, you wouldn't do that in an actual sales call situation, because you would turn off the other person and you obviously wouldn't get the sale. It's the same type of thing. You're just doing this more online now, and a more of a somewhat general audience, but at the same time, because hopefully it's what they want to hear, you should be resonating with them.
Yes. And I love your point about the data, because that comes up a lot with the guests on my show in various forms, is like what data actually matters. And at the end of the day, I love what you're saying. I'm so aligned with that, is that if you could have thousands of impressions, but if no one is reaching out to you in the DMs or saying something in a comment that leads you to be able to start a conversation offline, like you said,
Mhm.
what good is that? What good is it to have all those numbers if it's not actually translating into sales or potential sales in terms of discovery calls? So I love that point.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so it really is a mindset shift. Say that 3 times fast. Mind shift for
It's nine
without.
o'clock in the morning when we haven't had all of our coffee yet.
Right, yeah, yeah, exactly. Mind shift set, that you really need to go through is that, is this content going to turn on the light bulb above a prospect's head who's viewing this, to the point where they may want to either reach out via DMs, or like you said, comment, or be more likely to accept a connection request, or to accept some kind of outbound type of effort that I'm putting out, because they have this point at the top of their mind. And because of this, you're starting to become more of a thought leader, more of that, hey, this guy, this gal, this whatever, this is the go-to person in my industry. You need
Hmm.
to build that thought leadership. You do that through value-driven content. The value-driven content has to have information, has to have value in it that other people see that you are bringing, not with the stuff that you want to talk about.
Yes. And one thing I wanted to bring up along those lines, so when I take my clients through the content strategy process that I use, the first is getting really clear on those buyer personas, and then we take those personas and we dig into the first step is pain points. What are the pain points that that audience has? And so a
Yep.
lot of times, again, it goes back to something we touched on earlier is like you as the expert in your space are like, well, they need to know this. And I
Mhm.
ask the question, I'm like, okay, but are they aware of it? Are they
Right.
aware of this thing that you want to tell them? Do they know that that's a problem? And a lot of times their answer back to me is like, well, no, they don't know, but it's still important. I'm like, I agree with you that it's important.
Right.
However, that's not going to be the thing that draws them in and gets them interested in what you have to say because that's not something that they're even aware is a problem for them. So you need to put yourself in their shoes and say, what is keeping them up at night? What are those things that are making them want to pull their hair out? And how can I create content that shows them they don't have to live that way and there is a better way through, the process or whatever it is that you sell. So I just wanted to hone in on that for a second.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, it even goes beyond that a little bit more. So one of the key phrases that I always use that we talked in the 85 conversations it seems like that we've had so far is stop talking about how you help people and just help people.
Yes.
So do that
Tell
in
them, don't tell them.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, just do that in your content and actually help them with a problem or with what you think might be a problem with them. And because you're talking to clients, you should know what their problems basically are and you should generally know how you respond to those problems and how you help them. So, why not do that in your content so that people are thinking, "Oh, wow, this gal, this whatever is right. I need to talk to him." That's exactly what
Mhm.
you're trying to do. I mean, because you're actually when you stop talking about help people and just help people, you're helping them in a general sense though. That's the one thing you have to remember. You're not going to well, you may solve like one person's specific problem, but generally speaking, they're just going to get an idea from your content that this person knows what they're talking about. This person will be able to help me based on what they talked about in this video. So it may not help them directly, but yet you're proving that you can help. And that's where the sales conversation gets started.
Yes. Okay, so going back to your specific example of that client that you worked with,
Mhm.
how did you go about helping them shift what they were creating and speaking to the right audience instead of speaking to their industry peers?
Yeah, so essentially what we did is just kind of that process that we went through. What are your clients looking to solve? I mean, what problems are they having that you can speak to through your expertise and through the products and services that you're offering? And I wasn't the person who was I was kind of on the sidelines for this one. I wasn't directly involved, but at the same time, you can tell that when a person starts thinking more like that, their light bulb goes off above their head, and I can almost guarantee you that they will start thinking of different pieces of content themselves just based on what they hear from from current clients and from
Mhm.
prospects as well, even prospects who don't end up buying your product or services. They're still or hopefully they're communicating with you and they're telling you their problems. So
Yep.
even people who you don't sell, who may go to someone else or whatever, you can still get some benefit from talking to all these people because you're learning about their situations and all of that is potential content, especially the way that we think. Stop talking about help people and just help people, be of value,
Yep.
be that go-to person in your industry. And if there's something that you're like, I really don't know. I really don't know. I'm not sure. Do a LinkedIn poll.
Mhm.
ask them. Sometimes you just got to ask them, or maybe if you are going to potentially offer something that's slightly different and you really don't know, but you do know how to help, you can frame that poll in that type of thing. But, ask people.
Yes, market research.
Yeah, market research. And I mean, now that LinkedIn polls have calmed down and people aren't putting out those ridiculous polls just because it was the shiny new thing that was out there, and we all got bombarded with those ridiculous polls. Any poll that I see anymore, you can tell that there's thought been put into it and that want to um, people really want to get good quality answers and not the ridiculous polls that, like toilet paper, does it go over or go under? I mean, those ridiculous
How do you
things.
take your coffee?
Yeah, right. Yeah, all the you see those still every once in a while, but even those sometimes are framed in a humorous yet effective way. But
Yeah.
now that LinkedIn has moved on to the next shiny thing, people are using polls effectively. And one way that you can actually use a poll to not only help you out, but to also potentially start sales conversation is that you can send your polls, because your polls go out as posts essentially. You can send your posts to individual people and as messages, as DMs within the LinkedIn platform,
Mm,
and ask them to comment on it.
yep.
Or ask them to vote on
You
it, and
take
then
the poll.
hopefully
Yeah.
also comment on it. So, I mean,
Yes.
you can actually use polls in not only a broad way, but also in a very targeted way.
Yes, I love that example for sure. And I've done that on some polls that I've put out. And I'm like, geez, I didn't get as many people as I thought might answer this. So then I just start DMing people. I'm like, I would love for you to weigh in on this. I'm really curious to learn where you stand on it. I love that idea. So something else I wanted to touch on, Bob, in the time that we have left is this, especially this example that you shared, because it's in the financial services space. So before I left corporate to do my own thing, I was in the financial services world.
Mhm.
And this was a common challenge with the sales. It was a sales organization,
Sure.
and I was a marketing person supporting a sales team, and I saw it all the time. It's like I would get the sales reps to post content geared towards our target audience, but everyone who was commenting and engaging on it was all the employees who worked at the company. And I know that this
Yeah.
is common. I know that this
Yeah,
happens.
it happens. Yeah, without a doubt.
So I have some thoughts on how you kind of go about course correcting that, but what would you share?
Yeah, so actually it gets back to a certain extent to what I just mentioned with the polls. And that's, first of all, having that good piece of content that you think is going to be a benefit of value where you're actually helping people. Send those posts to the people who you think it's actually going to help.
Mm,
I
and
mean,
and
send them direct.
DMs, do you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
In the DMs, hey, here's a post right here on LinkedIn that I think that you may find interesting. Or, as per our previous conversation on X, I just did a post on this topic. It covers some of the things that we discussed, but there was something I thought of afterwards that I put in there as well. You may find it interesting
Mhm.
through it and read it, and feel free to like or comment on it if you want to as well. Actually, sometimes doing posts directly after conversations, especially if you've had a great takeaway, is a good way to not only just share content in general, but it can also serve as like a follow-up
Yes.
to an actual sales call.
I
And it's
love that.
difficult to do.
Yeah, I love that. And that's how I get my ideas for content. It's like it's from a discovery call or a client call or my office hours with my group. So much good stuff comes out of those conversations. Like, oh, this is something that someone's challenged with, and here's a tip that I can give them to help.
Yeah.
So I love that. The other thing that I was gonna say, and maybe it's almost like more upstream. I love the example that you gave, and I think that's a great one.
Mhm.
But I always kind of felt like, at least in that environment, it was like, okay, we kind of need to right the ship, because if you are a part of a larger organization and
Right.
everyone is just used to commenting on each other's stuff, you see each other in each other's feeds, like you've kind of created this ecosystem that's really not going to help you when it comes to marketing and sales. And so I always encourage people, like, if you don't like what you're seeing in your feed, or you're finding that you're getting the wrong people engaging on your stuff, proactively going out and searching for those ideal clients, running the filters on LinkedIn, finding who those people are, following them, commenting on their content,
Yep.
sending them DMs if it makes sense. Like, you have to take that more, I think it's more of a proactive approach as opposed to
Yeah.
just, okay, let me hop on LinkedIn and see what shows up in my feed. You kind of have to
Yeah.
actively like reconfigure that so you're seeing people in your feed that are your ideal client and not your competitors or coworkers.
Right. Yeah. That's a great point. I subscribe to that 100%, and I will do what what we do at Social Sales Link, and what is called a yes and in the world of comedy improv. Um, you can also follow influencers on LinkedIn, and you could be following influencers that your audience of prospects follows as well. And it's really easy to do because you go down to the bottom of their profiles. And if they're following an influencer, you can,
Mm.
um, if you have 5 people who are following this one influencer, or 10 people who are following another influencer, you're like, okay, this person may actually have maybe getting the eyeballs, and this is where we get into more of a little bit of general marketing kind of group think. But this person may be attracting the audience that I want to get. So then you start following that that influencer, that more general influencer, but then you start commenting on their content with actual insights based on whatever content or whatever post that they're sharing. And that's impossible to come up with an example just because there's so many of them. But if you're
Yeah.
able to add value and then actually start to be seen by not only this audience of people who are following them, but hell, there's probably other people who are following them as well. I mean, we actually teach how to market by influencer, and it's just
Mm.
only by and it's only by commenting and liking in their posts. And because you're not doing it in a spammy way, you're actually adding content. It's we think it's perfectly fine to do. Now, if you were just in there, doing spam and stuff like that,
Like
obviously,
poaching people and
like
yeah,
parking
being
people, stuff like
overly.
that. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, don't go and do it with like evil intentions. Go into it because you want to help people, but at the same time,
Mhm.
you can get benefit from it.
Yeah. I love that idea. That's a great one. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, we have shared so many great takeaways for everyone today. Very tangible, actionable things that everyone can go and do on their own on LinkedIn and really more proactively curate that audience of prospects like you talked about. That's been awesome.
Uh-huh.
Bob, in the remaining time that we have, because we do need to wrap things up, is there anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to share, or maybe something we did share and you're like, I just really want people to remember this from our conversation?
Stop talking about helping people and just help people, man. I
Yes.
mean, seriously. I mean, that thought should be like an undertone to everything that you do, not only in prospecting, but I mean, just in business in general.
Yes.
It's a
I
great
love it.
lesson to have, I think.
Yep. Show, don't tell. Awesome.
Yeah.
And Bob, lastly, if anyone wants to learn more about what you do and how you help clients, the work that you and your team do, how can they reach out or how can they learn more?
Look me up on LinkedIn and reach out to connect. And when you connect, just mention this show so I know where you're coming from. And it's Bob Woods is really simple to do. If you want to go to the website, socialsaleslink.com/Bob, really easy to find out more about me there. And I do have an ebook that we're giving away too that is I think and hope is very apropos to what we're talking about here. It's called A Thought Leader's Original Content Checklist. So it has strategies for creating authentic, impactful content that resonates with your audience, boom, 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 and drives engagement as well. And you can get to that really simply. This is a redirect, but it will direct you to the sign up page, socialsaleslink.com/Bob checklist, all one word. Again, socialsaleslink.com/Bob checklist.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bob. That sounds like a really great resource. I want to go check it out.
Yeah, You are
Awesome.
right.
Well, I will include that link in all of the places where this is live streaming and in our podcast notes. And thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Bob, for sharing your expertise with everyone. And I have a feeling this is just the first of future conversations.
I certainly hope so.